Roughly 6 weeks ago, reaction YouTuber Jammies, or as I like to call him Jammies Cell, reacted to the video titled Race Realism by the creator Exquafante. Despite Jammy Cell's channel description saying he is all about countering the spread of misinformation and educating people, he actually spread misinformation, and he said some pretty, well, retarded things. Not only that, but he also falsely accused Exquafante, or as I call him, Exo, of lying and fabricating evidence. Not only did he accuse him of lying and fabricating evidence, he based his entire video about that, bringing it up multiple times.
He just lied about the first actual study he brought up. He lied to the audience with evidence. So I'm gonna give minus fucking 10 on citation for that. For lying to me and wasting my fucking time. This guy is straight up just fucking lying to us, so that we'll believe him. Is what it really is. He's just fucking lying to us. I've seen before. How do we know he's not just lying? He already lied about other shit. How do we know he's not lying about this? Oh wait, shit. I actually lied to my audience. He fabricated some evidence before or tampered with it.
Usually I would not really care. But Jammy Cell's actions led to the pollution of the most beautiful comment sections on this entire website. You don't understand how beautiful it was before, free of genetic deniers, free of Marxists, free of communists. I mean, there were some breakfast havers here and there. But after the Jammy Cells video, there were plenty of brain-dead Marxists and communists. And the comments section lost its original purity, which is why we all must say one massive fuck you to Jammy Cell for ruining the most beautiful comment section on the entire YouTube. I already made a short counter video against Jammy Cell where I called him out on it, and his uneducated and mental gymnastics addicted audience did not care. And today I will debunk Jammy Cell's idiotic opinions about race and expose some of his dirty tricks. Actually, before I go any further, I will admit that Exo's video is not perfect. As you will see, he made a few mistakes which Jammy Cell capitalized on. So if any one of you is interested in race realism, check out videos from Commander Waldo and C. Kyle. These boys made amazing videos on this topic. I really want you to check out their videos after you are done and leave a nice comment. Tell them something like, Liberian sent me here, or the Kittyland has found a new ally. Right, let's get back to it. I already wasted so much time, now let's do this shit.
That we are all born equal. We are all equal.
We will start from the beginning of Jammy Cell's video and move on to the end. I will only include things that are worth calling out.
This is probably the most requested video I have. I mean, since my first video I uploaded, people have been saying, cover this, cover this, cover this. And I wasn't going to cover it because it's pretty fucking bad. You know, as I'm sure the thumbnail probably says, in my eyes, this is nothing but pseudoscience. Racist pseudoscience at that. I mean, he's essentially arguing or trying to defend social Darwinism, which if you don't know what social Darwinism is, it's the idea that certain like populations of Homo sapiens are further along the chain of evolution, so certain people are more evolved, more sophisticated, civilized and whatnot than other groups of people. And as you can guess, the ones at the top were white people, because they were the ones in power at the time that social Darwinism was created. So yeah, socialist Darwinism is a pseudoscience. It's been disproven. Human Genome Project has shown that we're all one species.
First of all, it's quite difficult to define social Darwinism, but by far this is probably the most inaccurate and the most misleading and the most retarded definition ever. Social Darwinism is not an idea or a theory. It's more of a thinking framework, which advocates that those who cannot survive on their own in the modern society should be left to fend for themselves. Thus, it advocates for no welfare, no social programs, no EBT next month. I mean, social Darwinism is thus mostly a morals question, and I'm not all that interested in morals. You cannot really debunk or prove who deserves what fate. So social Darwinism cannot really be debunked as such.
Like populations of Homo sapiens are further along the chain of evolution, so certain people are more evolved, more sophisticated, civilized and whatnot than other groups of people. And as you can guess, the ones at the top were white people, because they were the ones in power at the time that social Darwinism was created.
Literally, no one considers evolution to be objective. That there is a trajectory which an organism has to reach, or is meant to reach, and that whites are closest to that goal. No one has ever claimed that, ever. So I don't think Jammies is using a strawman fallacy. I think he is lying. I don't want to believe he is too disabled to use Google and to read.
So yeah, socialist Darwinism is a pseudoscience. It's been disproven. Human Genome Project has shown that we're all one species, and that we do not differ from each other genetically. Like, overwhelmingly, we are the same as each other. Very, very little differences. So, with that being said...
What the fuck does he mean with very little differences? If you would look at our base pairs, the raw numbers say all humans are mutually 99.9/99.8% identical. But actually, this doesn't mean there is very little differences. You have to remember this, we share 98.8% of our base pairs with chimps.
The human genome and the chimpanzee genome have both been completely sequenced, and this is a small section, a part of the genome that matches. If we follow along here, human-chimp, go all the way along here, all the way along here, they're all identical. Differences between the two are indicated by a little man who is in fact Svante Parbo, a very distinguished Swedish geneticist now working in Germany. It's a little game of find Parbo. Follow along this row here, chimp, human, identical, identical, identical. There's a difference. Walk along, walk along, walk along, all the same, identical, no difference at all between the human and the chimpanzee, exactly the same, exactly the same. Now we see another difference there, A versus G. Walk along, walk along, walk along, and there are no more differences in that whole row. Almost all of the human genome and the chimpanzee genome is identical. A tiny number of differences account for all the really quite large differences that we see between humans and chimpanzees.
So yeah, between humans, that 0.1 or 0.2 can result in massive differences. Hell, the difference between a man and a woman is one silly little chromosome.
Race realism is the position that race is a biological reality, not a social construct.
Alright, so, thesis. I told you I'm going to be pausing a lot. For me, this is a mixed bag, because on one hand, it's very clear. He's saying race realism is the belief that race, as we think of it, is not a social construct, it is a biological fact. And keep that in mind through this whole video, that is what he's arguing. He is saying that race is not socially constructed, but it is biological fact that there are different species of Homo sapiens, if you will, or different categories, and they're along different evolutionary progress or whatever.
Okay, Jammies, before I move on, I will call you a disgusting fucking liar. So let's break down what he said.
It's very clear. He's saying race realism is the belief that race, as we think of it, is not a social construct, it is a biological fact.
The race, as we think of it, is not a social construct, but a biological fact.
And keep that in mind through this whole video, that is what he's arguing. He is saying that race is not socially constructed, but it is biological fact that there are different species of Homo sapiens, if you will, or different categories, and they're along different evolutionary progress or whatever.
Whoa, did you guys catch that flip he did? I mean, I don't want to get too mad at Jammies since he is retarded after all, so things like this tend to happen. Exo never said that there are other species of Homo sapiens, and in your description you put this silly thing, what it means to be human.
Every person living on Earth today belongs to the same species, Homo sapiens.
This is something called red herring fallacy. Nobody here is arguing that there are different species of humans, but that there are different subspecies. The first 5 minutes of Jammies' Cells video are pure dog shit. He gave completely wrong definitions for the terms social Darwinism and race realism. The sources in the description either contradict him, are fully irrelevant, or just bullshit.
Race is not like these. Race is a biological reality that arose from evolutionary pressures long before human societies, languages, or institutional conventions existed. In fact,
So, here's the big issue with definitions. He's arguing that race is real, and he never defines it. He never actually tells us what race is. And you might be thinking, well, he just defined it. No. Let's go back to that definition. He says race is a biological reality which preceded language, culture, etc. So let's chop that sentence up. The latter half, he's saying it comes before other stuff. That's not what it is. That's when it came about. So he's trying to show us that this is old. That's not actually a definition. That's just like kind of its impact on history. So we got the first half of that sentence. Race is a biological reality. What does that mean? What do you mean by biological reality? Like, is it genetic? Is it hereditary? And again, remember the definitions for traffic laws was like twice the length his definition of race, which he's trying to argue is correct. And again, if you think that was a great definition, tell me what race is in the comment. Off his definition alone, race is a biological reality. Go into the comments and tell me what race is. Don't look up other definitions. Tell me what it is. And I guarantee you there's going to be 20 different fucking definitions. That is not a sign of a good communicator. That is a sign of poor communication.
Okay, to be fair, Exo should have said what he means by race, though it should be obvious what race means. It means subspecies in this context. I would suggest you guys check out Waldo's video on the topic of race realism. It's much more detail and arguments are presented in a superior way, I would say.
What actually is the meaning of the term race? Sometimes it refers to a classification rank existing below a subspecies, and sometimes it's used as a synonym for subspecies. If race is essentially the subspecies of human, then what does subspecies mean? A subspecies is generally defined as a rank below a species where two or more population groups of the same species have different physical and behavioural characteristics from each other, but can still interbreed and create viable offspring, and are usually geographically isolated from each other. It's this geographical isolation that causes these different populations to evolve in different directions, as the difference in climate and environment will affect these populations in different ways.
In fact, rather than race being a social construct, it is far more accurate to say that society is a product of race. To say race is a social construct is to invert cause and effect, like saying clay is a sculpture. Races are different because they evolved by divergent evolutionary paths.
Okay, so let's stop before he gets into his evidence. That is, he just made a giant claim that race came before everything. And not only did race come before everything, but society itself, human civilization as we know it, is because of race, because we want to preserve race. So the reason that they started farming in the Fertile Crescent was to preserve race. The reason they built the pyramids and society and the pharaohs of Egypt was to preserve race. The reason Europe had all its kingdoms and eventually republics is to preserve race.
Whoa, did he do it again?
A straw man fallacy is where one exaggerates someone's argument and uses this exaggeration as a way of disproving one's original argument without actually paying attention to the original argument raised.
Let's replay this part of Exo's video.
In fact, rather than race being a social construct, it is far more accurate to say that society is a product of race. To say race is a social construct is to invert cause and effect, like saying clay is a sculpture. Races are different because they evolved by divergent evolutionary paths.
That's right, Jammies literally twisted Exos's words and added his own. As you heard, Exo never claimed society was built to preserve race. His point is that race influenced the concept of society more than the society influenced the concept of race.
That is a huge claim. That he provides absolutely, not only does he provide no evidence for it, he doesn't even give us an example.
He doesn't have to give an example for something he never said. And at the end of the day, civilization is an evolutionary strategy. Civilization is just an advanced pack of humans, more advanced, as in more sophisticated and much bigger, much more members. Our main motivation behind forming civilization was to ensure the continuation of our genetic lineages. Most civilizations had something called borders, and no one could enter them from the outside without consequences.
I'm going to give -9 for citations again, because that's a huge claim that he just doesn't even have any evidence for. And you know what I'll do is I'll do some citations right now. John Locke, said that we left the state of nature and started civilization because of disputes, specifically disputes between property. John Locke's a lot fucking smarter than you, Mr. Exquafonte. What do you have to say about his argument?
The first quote, what do you mean with disputes? Disputes with who? With our family? With our relatives? Or perhaps with outsiders? And what do you mean with property? Do you mean land? Do you mean food? Do you mean cattle? Do you mean chattel? And you are genuinely retarded if you believe this quote fundamentally contradicts what Exo said.
Hobbes said, and I'll have to fact check myself in editing, that we left society for the social contract so that it wasn't this fucking Hobbesian war against everything, all against all, and we left it to form societies for protection so that we could have a better future.
Second quote, also quite vague. Because it kind of implies that the jump from the supposed state of nature to civilization was clean cut, and that it prevailed because it, as it said, people joined civilization, which is not true. Civilization spread because it was a superior evolutionary strategy. It conquered and replaced the non-civilization through force. If there was a mutation in one chimp pack that would allow them to reach 300 members instead of usual 150 maximum members, the 300 pack large chimp pack would be able to destroy and genetically replace the other packs without this mutation. The only issue for this supermassive chimp pack would be energy. How could they gather enough food to sustain a massive population? But with humans, this bottleneck disappeared after the appearance of agriculture. Also, something called social contracts is not a product of civilization, it is a derivative of it. To say that social contracts appeared after civilization would mean that civilization could exist without a social contract, which it cannot.
Those are three guys that are way smarter than you. What do you have to say about their claims for why civilization started?
This was pretty fucking annoying.
Oh, bro, this person way smarter than you said this. What do you have to say to that?
He just lied to us. He just, in my opinion, he just fabricated evidence. He is lying to the audience so that it seems like that his point is stronger than it actually is. And that's what this whole argument is he's lying to the audience. So, with that in mind, does that mean that we can trust any other evidence that he is going to give us? No. He just lied about the first actual study he brought up. So, to be completely honest, we really cannot trust him as a narrator from this point forward. Audience with evidence. So I'm gonna give minus fucking 10 on citation for that. For lying to me and wasting my fucking time making this whole argument and trying to seem smart when you have to fucking fabricate shit so that it looks real.
Thankfully, Jammies linked that exact study. Let's check out that study real quick.
He never says that. The study never comments on behavior, or neurological quality, or thoughts or feelings. The study doesn't even mention that stuff.
Wait, what does this thing say? No, it can't be. Crazy how this was in the thumbnail in the description and how Jammies based his entire video on this shit. I just want to say something before moving on. Exo did not lie. First of all, he did not put these words there. Second of all, even if he did, those words are supposed to act as a claim. And then the graph in the citation is meant to act as evidence. The words above the study is the way you would explain the findings to a 5-year-old. And just because a study did not explicitly state your conclusion, but agrees with your conclusion, you are not a liar for bringing up that study as your evidence. I felt like this was important to point out because Jammies and his audience struggles with reading and mental gymnastics addiction.
So let's clarify the causal sequence. First, ecological selection pressures shaped population-specific gene pools. Genes influence developmental trajectory, including the structure of the brain. Neural architecture shapes cognition and temperament shape behavior. Therefore, thought and behavior are largely constrained by biology.
Now you might be thinking, that sounds real smart and real cool. And you know what I'm thinking? No citation.
Asking for citations is valid, but it's never an argument. And it makes you seem like this guy. Also, EXO is not obligated to give a source since he made a qualitative claim, not a quantitative one.
That's all his opinion. Not only is his opinion, it's like that's textbook social Darwinism, which has been disproven. It's a pseudoscience.
Oopsie, my editing software glitched out with those incorrect buzzers. I totally didn't mean to put those there. I am sure Jammies Cell absolutely cooked there. But obviously, since I am the #1 ranked fact-checker and Google search user, I want to see if Jammies Cell really cooked. Just for good measure. So let's see if anything EXO said 30 seconds ago is true.
First, ecological selection pressures shaped population-specific gene pools.
First premise made by EXO is vindicated by basic biology.
Genes influence developmental trajectory, including the structure of the brain.
Second premise is vindicated by genetics, therefore true.
Neural architecture shapes cognition and temperament.
Third one, incredible, not only intuitive, but also the cornerstone of neuroscience.
And cognition and temperament shape behavior.
Fourth one, also, the basis of neuroscience.
Therefore, thought and behavior are largely constrained by biology.
So we have 4 premises that are true, and therefore the conclusion is also true.
Like that's textbook social Darwinism, which has been disproven. It's a pseudoscience.
So if something that EXO said, something validated by biology, genetics, and neuroscience, is social Darwinism according to Jammies Cell, isn't social Darwinism legit then? Why did you just say that's XYZ? Why didn't you try to debunk any of these claims? Oh, that's right, because you can't.
The genetic variation between humans is very small, and it does not impact like your ability to fucking rationalize the world. Or at least not in the ways that he's arguing.
Fields of neuroscience and behavioral genetics disagree with you. Also, as we just saw, genetic variation between humans is significant.
So this is such shit. This video is absolute fucking dog shit. I'm willing to say that. I was trying not to be crazy on it, but we're 3 minutes in, and he has not defined the thing he's fucking talking about.
First claim is somewhat true.
His entire argument is based off his own personal anecdote.
Second one, false.
He lied about evidence, fabricating evidence.
Third one, again, you are the disgusting liar in this story.
And he's committed a bunch of fallacies.
Fourth one, again, you are the one who committed the logical fallacies, not him.
And then now he's just giving us social Darwinism, which is a pseudoscience.
And for the fifth one, I was today years old when I learned that biology, genetics, neuroscience, and behavioral genetics are pseudoscientific and debunked theories.
This is the worst fucking argument I think has ever been on this channel. This is the laziest fucking argumentation I've ever seen. Actually, no, it's not lazy. This is the most deceptive argumentation I've ever seen. This guy is straight up just fucking lying to us so that we'll believe him. Is what it really is. He's just fucking lying to us.
Accusing someone of lying while arguing against science is insane. Literally. And why is the argument shit? Can you literally say anything of substance? Having an activated limbic system is not an argument.
And notice how he never actually says the word social Darwinism in this video. Probably because he doesn't want us to actually go look up what it is and see that there's a lot of evidence that debunked it.
So that is why you were unable to look it up and why you gave us the completely wrong definition for that term. That damn EXO.
Of course, culture does exert a recursive influence, but all traits are influenced by genetics. Another objection claims that because human traits vary along a continuum, racial categories lack biological validity. This reflects a misunderstanding of how biological classification operates. Continuous variation is the norm, not the exception in evolutionary biology. Red and orange gradually blend into one another, yet both are distinct and meaningful categories.
And yeah, so let me hold on. I actually do have something to kind of explain this. Alright, so here we go. I got a graph of, or a spectrum of skin tones. So this is what he's kind of trying to do. He's like, well look, this is different. Hold on. This over here is different than this over here, therefore race exists. That's not the point. Yeah, skin tones change, no shit. Everyone fucking knows that. Walk in any American city and you'll see there's lots of different skin tones. That's not what's being refuted. It's not that people got different skin tones. It's where does one race stop and another one starts. And this is what I'm going to say. This is white. This is now brown. This line is completely arbitrary. I made that decision based off my own cultural... Well, I did it randomly, but we make these lines off cultural assumptions and sociological influences. Nothing actually really separates these two colors. This line isn't objective, it's subjective. We draw the line differently for everyone. What about here? What about here? Where does brown stop being brown and black begin? Is it here? What about here? How about over here? And that's the main thing, and this is what he's not getting, is he's trying to be like, well, yeah, it's on a continuum, but that doesn't disprove race is objective. He's completely missing the point. It's not that there is different colors of skin. And again, notice how he's talking about skin color.
You are so intellectually challenged, it's insane. Are you literally incapable of understanding basic analogies? This was not about skin colors, you absolute moron. Exo was talking about general human spectral variation, not skin color, you idiot.
Ideological classification operates. Continuous variation is the norm, not the exception, in evolutionary biology. Red and orange gradually blend into one another, yet both are distinct and meaningful categories. Likewise,
Not about skin color, I mean it is, but obviously this person's not black, this person's not white, and this person is white. If we would look at people's pigmentation and bone structure, we would be able to group them pretty accurately.
It's not that, it's where do you draw these lines? That's the part that people argue, and that's the part that isn't supported by science, is where these lines have been drawn. Because there's genetic differentiation, right? I don't even know if that's a word. There's genetic differences between lots of populations. And everyone's gonna be a mix of a little bit of everything, especially today, since we have a lot of interracial mixing, right? Which I imagine this guy fucking hates that. But it's... Because why is it, like, if I'm making a racist society, why is it everyone left of this line gets to have rights, and everyone right of this line doesn't get to have rights? This line, I put this line here subjectively. It isn't objective. I can't prove that this is white and this is black. I can't prove that. Because it's just, you can't, it's not objective. I can make arguments for it's like, this is why I think it should be here. But I can never actually prove that, because it is a social construct. It is, at the end of the day, it's an idea that humans invented. And you can't prove it.
This is such an imbecilic line of thinking. Obviously, there is an arbitrary component to all this. But to then say, bro, it's all just a social construct is retarded. Also, newsflash, guys, we can use arbitrary categorization for something real and physical. Time, for example. The concept of a 12-month year, 24-hour day, a 60-minute hour, a 60-second minute. Those are all social constructs. And yet they describe something real that exists independent of our collective agreement. With humans, a computer can sort us into clusters that are pretty in line with our understanding of race. And guess what? We can tell to which group people belong to by looking at their DNA.
I also try to summarize some of our own results, and so this one I think is quite neat. It shows that if you're thinking about African Americans and white Americans in the US, and so we're not looking at any other group, just people who have only two ancestry components, African and European. And so if we look at how these people self-identify, you can easily model this from the data, and you can see that if we put European ancestry on the x-axis, which of course can go from 0 to 100%, and you can have the probability of self-rating as this or that group, you see that if we look at people with 0% European ancestry, which is to say 100% African ancestry, these people are more or less 100% have 100% chance of identifying themselves as African American, and it really stays much in the plus 90s region until you hit like 30% or so, 40-30% European ancestry, in which it kind of the down slope starts being serious. And if you look at people with about 60-ish% European ancestry, then these are the people who tend to self-report being both African American and European American. But there's a kind of wide span here, so you can find people with, say, who only have like 5% European ancestry, and some of these people claim to just be European American, and you can get the same thing over here. You can get people with basically 100% European ancestry, but they claim to be African American because they have some like ancestor, or maybe they just made it up, like the whatever Rachel woman.
Yeah, basically, just because the lines between categories we are describing are arbitrary, the reason we are categorizing them are not arbitrary. With cholesterol-lowering medication, or statins, they are usually prescribed to people with high LDL cholesterol levels, which is 190 milligrams per deciliter. So a person with 191 milligrams of LDL will get a statins prescription, and a person with 189 milligrams of LDL will not get the prescriptions. The line between the acceptable and not acceptable LDL levels is 100% arbitrary. So does that mean that the cholesterol levels classification is not a biological reality? Of course not. Yeah, anyway, I could not care less if you agree with the concept of races or if and how you want to classify humanity. The genetic differences between humans will persist, and some of them are significant. If you would show an alien, a German, a Japanese, and a Nigerian person, if you would look at their morphology, behavioral, and cognitive profiles, their metabolisms, would he classify them into the same exact subspecies? I mean, most of this debate is semantics and wordplay. People who are for racial classifications will have reasonable standards for dividing humans into subspecies. Those who are against it, mostly for political reasons, will have insane standards for what is a biological subspecies.
In my community, the scientific community. Okay, so she'll go into synodonty and how your teeth are shaped. But I think that really explains it best. There are traits that you can tie to populations. But again, it goes back to what I was saying with like the skin tone graph. It's not about that there are differences. It's where do you draw the line? That's the difference that is the issue, especially when you write policies about that. So, once again, it's kind of like he can't really make the claim that is a biological truth when the lines he's drawing are not objective.
But rather a problem with scientists and other intellectuals being too afraid to speak the truth.
And that's the big issue. Thank you, Exco Fonte, for being so brave to say what everyone is really thinking but didn't want to say. That scientists are just too scared to say that billions of people are inferior. They're too scared to support the theories that implemented the Holocaust and racial segregation and ethnic cleansing. They're too scared to say that those theories are correct. Ah, that's the issue. Okay. I see. It's not that there's a fuck ton of evidence that disprove those theories. It's that everyone's just too scared to talk about those theories.
Is Jammies going to ignore how people had their whole careers ruined for talking about genetic differences, and how it's fucking impossible to get a research grant if you want to study anything related to it? But also how difficult it is to get your research published.
So, last thing that's interesting about this paper is that actually it was solicited for the Encyclopedia of Evolutionary Psychological Science, which is kind of I think it's Springer, the academic publisher, who runs this, and I was invited by the editor to do this thing. So that's why I spent a year on it, and that's why I had the 5,000 word limit. But then eventually, when I was done it, I sent it in, and they said like, oh, by the way, you can only have 30 references, and I had like 140 or something. So like I would have to trim 90% or whatever of my references, and then okay, I just I emailed them and saying, oh, okay, I can do that, but are you sure this isn't like a political thing and not a science thing? And then they said no, and then like 2 days later I got like another email says that, after further discussion we've decided to eliminate this entry, so now I'm free to send it to a different publication. And so that's often how things go in science with these politicized areas. So I sent this one to Mankind and it got published immediately. So that's why we have Mankind.
James Watson, the co-discoverer of DNA double helix structure, simply said this.
In 2007, he told the Sunday Times that he was inherently gloomy about the prospect of Africa because all our social policies are based on the fact that their intelligence is the same as ours, whereas all the testing says not really. He dared to say that intelligence, like everything else in human nature, is influenced by genetics, not just the environment.
Yes. His whole life was destroyed after that. He didn't say Africans are inferior. He said they seem not to have the same intellect as Europeans. Stating someone is less intelligent doesn't mean they have less moral value. If you say someone is smarter than you, do you mean that you are inferior to them? No. There's also Arthur Jensen. He got death threats for stating that black and white IQ gap is genetic. No one has been able to debunk him to this day. He was a leading psychometrician before being canceled. Another example, Charles Murray. He went through so much shit for stating in his book that there are IQ gaps between different groups living in America, something every single psychometrician will confirm.
Racist, sexist, Charles Murray has been canceled. He doesn't get invited to colleges anymore. These students turn their backs and call Murray racist, sexist, anti-black. Murray's racist and sexist, they say, because he wrote this book, The Bell Curve.
It has been some time since it's been a more controversial book.
Controversial largely because some people lie about what the book says.
That essentially says that African Americans are subhuman. And if you push
genetically less intelligent.
Genetically less intelligent and less moral.
But the Bell Curve doesn't say that, although the angry students assume it does. They're that angry at you because you're perpetuating racism.
These kids had never read a word of anything I'd ever written.
More likely, they read slander about Murray from leftist smear sites like the Southern Poverty Law Center. You say white men are intellectually, psychologically, and morally superior.
I've never said that. I've never said anything remotely like that.
But the media kept saying he did.
It's so outrageous, we had to clear the studio.
You appear to be saying to black people, you're inferior, have a nice day.
So I asked Murray, do you believe that blacks are intellectually inferior?
If you give mental tests to a representative sample of whites and a representative sample of blacks, that there will be about a 1 standard deviation difference. To then translate that into people being inferior and superior is idiotic.
His book is filled with graphs. These are the bell curves, the distribution of IQ.
Blacks on average have a lower IQ than whites. However, whites are not at the top. East Asians on average have a higher IQ than whites. Ashkenazi Jews have higher IQs.
Many researchers say Murray's correct. IQs do differ by race. But lots of people want no discussion about racial differences, even obvious ones.
And what he said is that the gap could be partially genetic. And even if it was, it does not justify discrimination or hatred toward any specific group. So, you see, other mainstream experts, even those who are aware about genetics, they never talk about race differences because it's not worth it.
But I learned an important lesson.
Wonderful shirt you have.
You can't count on anyone.
It says that we are all Africans now.
It's not worth it to have your whole life ruined over something so obvious.
Race realism does not depend on science for its validity.
So then what the fuck? So you just wasted my time. That's what you did. You just wasted my fucking time. Guys, here's all the reasons that science actually supports what I'm saying, and science doesn't have evidence that race realism is...
The point is, despite what the mainstream experts say,
in my community, the scientific community,
no matter how many times a Marxist repeats that race is a social construct, the muscle fiber ratio differences do not go away. The IQ gap doesn't go away. The difference in behavior doesn't go away. Because those things do not depend on a social consensus. Because they are biological realities. Also, Exo made a mistake because he surrendered to the point that there is scientific consensus on race being a social construct, which doesn't fucking exist. Most so-called experts that deny the reality of a biological race are cultural anthropologists. And in China, the concept of biological race is alive and well.
And now we're getting into the Jews.
Placement of race realism in academia and public discourse did not arise from new empirical discoveries, but from
What are you, retarded?
An ideological pivot initiated by the Jewish anthropologist Franz Boas.
Oh.
Rejected the then dominant hereditarian view of
Everyone listen up. He's about to explain us how the Jews did it.
Race, claiming that behavioral and cognitive differences were purely environmental. Boas's student, Margaret Mead, further
and a woman.
his cultural determinist paradigm, and another student of Boas, Israel Ehrenberg, aka Ashley Montague, helped draft the 1950 UNESCO Statement on Race, which institutionalized the claim that race has no biological basis. Building on this framework, the Frankfurt School, comprised largely of Jewish Marxists such as Herbert Marcuse, Horkheimer, and and Theodore Adorno sought to pathologize European
Marxist
racial
Jews.
consciousness as inherently authoritarian. This ideological psychology, through the work of Jewish evolutionary biologists Stephen Jay Gould and Richard Levontin, and their efforts were reinforced by the epistemological shift of postmodernism, especially by the Jewish philosopher Jacques Derrida, who rejected objective categorization altogether. In conclusion...
Anyway, so this evidence, I'm going to get him on reasoning. So notice how he didn't actually go into their arguments at all. Instead of actually like bringing up their arguments and trying to refute the points they made, he just kept talking about how they're Jewish. Where it's like, hey, these guys made claims that go against me. Okay, so what's your counterpoint? They're Jewish. Okay, yeah, but could you go into like their argument and like dispute their argument? They're Jewish and Marxist. Okay, but like what points were they making? They're Jewish. So that's the thing, he never actually goes into an argument because he'd probably fucking lose, let's all be honest.
I seriously doubt that.
Well, I'm not really a part of Brazilians' did it crowd. But without Brazilian intellectuals, there would be no anti-hereditarianism. And yes, Jammies, the concept of race was discarded entirely for political reasons. And race denialism was pushed for political, not scientific reasons. I mean, I understand someone might be skeptical, because it's somewhat questionable where should the lines be drawn. But saying one race, the human race, is very misleading, inaccurate, and let's be honest, cringe.
We're the product of ignorant people who have been taught an ignorant thing, which is that there are 4 or 5 different races. There are not 4 or 5 different races, there's only one race on the face of the earth, and we're all members of that race, the human race.
The FST between certain human groups is higher than some recognized subspecies of other animals. Quick explanation of FST.
So, what is the fixation index and how is it calculated? You start by sequencing a section of DNA in one person. Then you measure the same section in a bunch of other people who belong to the same group. The percentage of letters which are different are recorded, which allows you to get the within average. Then you do the same thing, except you compare it to people from another group. This is the between average. To get the fixation index, you use this equation. In my example, the variation within is 20% and between is 40%. So the fixation index will be 0.5. If there is no variation between groups, then the FST will be 0, and if the two groups are really distant, it will approach 1. You can see that the numbers will change dramatically depending on the in-group that you use.
And FST is not even the key factor for taxonomy. It's the phenotypic differences. And do not even get me started on that. So yeah, scientifically, the concept of human subspecies has only been validated in the past 70 years. But it would be problematic for the globalist framework to acknowledge that we are different subspecies to one another. That is why the most of this race realism debate is a linguistic and political one. So yeah, basically the question of do the human races exist boils down to do you want them to exist? Me and my kiddies will say that a subspecies is a rank below a species, where 2 populations can create fertile offspring. But there are observable behavioral and morphological differences between them. And the people who are against race will say,
Actually, for a race to be valid, the FST has to be at least 0.67. There must be 3 million years of geographic and genetic isolation, and there has to be 0 overlap.
To spurg out over definitions of race would be silly. What really matters at the end of the day is that there are significant differences between humans caused by genetics and not culture, and not socioeconomic factors. And if you want to, you can divide races by looking at these biological traits.
So instead of actually addressing counter-arguments and the reasons that science moved away from race being a biological thing, instead he devolved to they're Jewish, therefore they're wrong. So let me ask you this, Exquafante. Try that again, but actually go into their arguments. Like, actually read their work, look at their points. I know, you're gonna have to fucking open a book. I know that's hard for you to do, unless it's made by a white supremacist, apparently.
Jammies telling someone to open a book is like a fat person telling someone they should lose weight.
You're gonna have to read. If you can do that. I don't know if you can.
Projecting your insecurities onto others is not very oriful.
Read their work, look over their points, and then respond to it. Instead of just being, they're Jewish and they made stuff I don't like. Instead being like, they made stuff that I disagree with, and this is why I disagree with it.
He had zero obligation to examine their arguments. He just said, where did this race denialist nonsense come from? And these people's arguments came from their ethno-religious identity.
But no, that would require you to not be fucking lazy. Something that you are incapable of, apparently.
Again with your silly projections. Meanwhile, you literally do not bother looking up meaning of words you do not know the meaning of.
Women do have higher levels of agreeableness over...
What the fuck does this mean? First off, source, I'm gonna knock off 3 points for source. Agreeableness. Like, what the fuck do you mean by this? Like women are more agreeable. How? If I go up to a woman, I'm like, yo, excuse me, man, can I fucking punch you in the face and, like, break your teeth? Are women more likely to agree to that? Is that what you mean? Do you mean, like... Now that I'm getting even more confused thinking about it. I generally have no fucking clue what he means by this. Like, agreeableness. Like...
Okay, so out of goodness of my heart, I will examine and counter the arguments of some of the guys Exo mentioned. So this whole race denialist nonsense comes from one bucko. His name was Franz Boas, a German-born Brazilian who immigrated to the US of A. He came up with some really silly idea of cultural determinism, that all behavioral differences between humans are a product of culture, not a product of genetics.
Because it has nothing to do with race and everything to do with culture.
He even conducted a study trying to prove his theories. He measured the skulls of 18,000 children of Eastern European immigrants and their children. And according to his results, the cephalic ratio, which is the ratio between the length of your skull by the width of your skull, changed. His point was that if something as genetically hardwired as your skull proportion can be changed by a better environment, what makes you think that we cannot alter IQ and behavior in similar fashion? Except 2 scientists, 90 years later, checked Boas's measurements, and it turns out Boas fudged the numbers. He made measuring mistakes, didn't control for age. And what they found was that genetic ancestry is the single most important thing in determining your skull's proportion, not your diet or place of birth. So, you see, Boas's career was not a scientific crusade, it was an ideological one. And his Padawans, notably Meade and Montague, continued spreading the cultural deterministic nonsense. By the 1970s, the Boasian cult expelled hereditarians from the mainstream anthropology. This is the time frame when kitty-pilled experts were starting to get witch-hunted. Yeah, so basically, Boas started it all. This whole race is a social construct, and all between group differences or environmental can be traced back to him and his buckos. And he frauded science to suit his retarded worldview. Next person with ultra-carcinogenic arguments is Richard Lewontin. Richard Lewontin was a Brazilian born in America. The main scientific contribution of Lewontin was measuring the FST of humanity. What he did was he analyzed 15 blood proteins and their frequency within and in between 6 different human groups. And what he found was that 85% of genetic variation can be found within races, 9.4% between different ethnic groups, and 6% among different racial groups. He then said that the FST of humanity is 0.06. And he said that this is way too little for humans to have races. Why? Well, his reason was that it would be mean, and that it would be bigoted, to group humans into biological, taxonomical subspecies. You see, Lewontin was a hardcore Marxist, and to him, a racial world would destroy his hopes of a Marxist utopia. Also, modern research said that the FST of humanity is something closer to 12, and even higher between some groups. So when someone says that humans have too low FST to have biological subspecies, ask them this.
What are you, retarded?
Also, Lewontin's idea is faulty because it assumes that the differences between races are trivial, just because they only make up 6% according to his data, or 12% according to later evidence. That is nonsense, obviously. That relative small difference is more than enough to tell the person's ancestry and race with 99% efficiency. So, yeah, Lewontin basically twisted his findings to suit his ideological intentions. Next up, we have Stephen Jay Gould. Now, this is a massive coper and a massive reality denier. I mean, yeah, pretty shitty book. It's called The Mismeasure of Man. He said some pretty retarded things, like saying G-factor is a made-up construct that doesn't predict anything in real life, and that intelligence is not general. He said your brain size is not correlated with intelligence, which is just welfare material. And this fucker lied. He literally lied about skull sizes. I mean, people who make their living off of denying genetics are usually very trashy people, but he is just exceptionally trashy. Gould also was raised by a Marxist, and he maintained his leftist views into adulthood. These guys are not the only one. There are many more anti-hereditary Brazilians, and I see no point in debunking them because all of their arguments are based on wishful thinking and have been debunked by many more people before than. I guess that does it. I will now declare Jammies' cell arc to be over. I mean, maybe he responds to my video, but he probably will not, because he would either have to admit that I am right, or he would have to do even more mental gymnastics to explain how he is right and I am wrong, and then I am just going to own him again. So, yeah, I would say that I won. Yeah, basically, I, as the #1 ranked fact-checker and Google search user, owned Jammies really hard. It was very easy since all of his arguments were either lies, insults, or logical fallacies, and what the fuck is happening strategy. Make sure to join my Discord server and subscribe to the channel. Until the next time, peace and love.